Hi, Acadiana. Meteorologist Dave Baker. Happy Tuesday to you. September the 30th. We're getting through the month of September here, and we still have yet to have a tropical system come toward the northern Gulf Coast. So got through the busiest month of the season, but we really still have October to go, and really anything can happen. There's not a whole lot that's in the models going into the future, but a lot of times when we get into the month of October, things tend to spin up a little bit closer to home. It doesn't give us a whole lot of warning time, and also a lot of times we don't see that in the extended models. But we're going to talk a little bit more about what we've got going on right now and what I'm seeing here over the next several days. So first, it's a little more cloudy outside, and that is going to hold our temperature down. Yesterday, I believe we hit 91 for the high, which is around about 4 or 5 degrees above normal, but we're running at 87 right now, heading for a high of 90. It does feel like 89. The dew point's still fairly low, and the humidity at 48%, but there is a little bit more cloud cover out there and a bit of a northeast breeze, so I do believe temperatures are going to be at least 1 or 2 degrees cooler than where we were on Monday. There's a look at our traffic cameras, and again, we do have some sunshine getting through those thin clouds out there, kind of a milky sky across the Acadiana region, but at this point, we don't have any rain coming down. Bit of an upper level disturbance is coming by. I'll show you that on the satellite in just a little while. A cloudy day over at Panama City Beach. If you've been with Let's Talk Tropics for several weeks here, you've noticed that the weather's always been beautiful at Panama City Beach, but this is actually some low cloud cover that's kind of spinning off the backside of Imelda, which is on the other side of the Florida Peninsula. Now, those clouds haven't quite reached their way all the way over toward Orange Beach, but this is looking off to the east, and you can see there are some clouds out in the distance. Dauphin Island looking nice and clear, although some milky skies there. Cocodrille's camera is down today, but you can see part of that upper level system is still spinning some clouds over to around Galveston, but the back edge of that is already starting to move across southeastern Texas, and I do expect a little more sunshine to return as we head into Wednesday. Of course, all the action is out here in the Atlantic. You've got Imelda there. You got Humberto way over here, but locally our waters are in pretty good shape. We're going to see nice north breezes about 5 to 10 knots, and seas only running about 1 to 2 feet. And again, on the radar here, we're picking up a couple of sprinkles, but a lot of this that we're seeing here over southeastern Texas is not hitting the ground. And behind this, at least off toward the west here, our skies are clearing. So we're going to see those high, thin clouds kind of sticking around for the remainder of the day. But as we take that off, you can see there's a little bit of a rotation there over northern Texas. That's that upper low, and you can see it a little bit better here on the satellite imagery. So low pressure right about there. That is going to kind of scoot its way off in this direction, kind of opening up more of as a trough as we get into the latter part of the week. So that as well as a bit of a surface low down here to the south, might combine to bring us a little better chance for some showers as we head toward the second half of the week. Not expecting tropical weather, but maybe a chance for some extra showers as we go down the road. But as you can see, we've got low pressure right there. There's not a lot of moisture associated with it, so that's why we're not seeing anything like trying to develop into a tropical system. If we were to see a lot more moisture out here in the middle part of the Gulf waters, I think we'd be a lot more concerned about something trying to get going. But right now, we're just not seeing any signs of that. And then over here, this is kind of that leading edge of the cloud cover coming off of Imelda, which is right over here, kind of off the Florida coast. And remember, I showed you that Panama City camera right about there. So you can see how the clouds are kind of starting to roll in. And then for us, we've got more of the upper level clouds, those milky skies. But it is clear out here to the west. So I do think we're going to see a little more sunshine as we go into Wednesday. Central America looking okay. Got a little bit of a monsoonal trough there coming off South America. That's going to bring some showers over toward Panama. But the rest of the areas of Central America, the western part of the Caribbean, nice and quiet. We do have a tropical wave that's kind of lifting off toward the west here over the eastern part of the islands, way out here in the Atlantic basin. So nothing looking like it's getting organized, at least at this hour right there. And then, of course, all the action is right here to the north. You've got Imelda and you've got Humberto, both in the Atlantic Ocean, and those are now going to kind of start to work off of each other. Humberto has weakened somewhat. Imelda has strengthened, but as everything starts to pull off toward the northeast, I do believe that Humberto is going to start to yank Imelda rather, off toward the east. Now, unfortunately, it looks like Bermuda is going to be in the crosshairs of Imelda. I was counting it out. They have missed out on 5 tropical systems that were kind of near misses so far this year. But Imelda looks like it's going to get them. It's going to be a hurricane most likely, but fortunately, this hurricane will whip through very, very quickly, and the wind speeds are not expected to be too intense. They are going to be hurricane force. We all know even going through a Category 1 hurricane here locally is rough stuff, but this is one that's going to whip through pretty quickly, and the island of Bermuda is used to having these tropical storms and hurricanes a lot more than other areas along the Gulf Coast or the East Coast. They get hit a lot more than we do, so they are going to be well prepared. But it is kind of fun to watch 2 tropical systems or 2 hurricanes that are basically next door to each other out of this huge Atlantic basin with the Gulf and the Caribbean and also the giant Atlantic Ocean there. It's kind of wild to see everything just kind of concentrated into such a short little area, a small little area there over the western part of the Atlantic. So we're going to go ahead and start with Imelda. Imelda did get upgraded to a hurricane earlier today, and it's strengthened since then, so winds are up to 80 miles per hour. Fortunately for the East Coast, we're seeing indirect effects. We have seen some significant amounts of rain here along the Georgia and the Carolina coast. There's also going to be some pretty good waves and some rip currents that are going to be coming along to the East Coast as well, and that's also going to be aided by Humberto that's just right there to the east over in the neighborhood. But Imelda is expected to remain a hurricane, and a hurricane warning is now up for the island of Bermuda, and at this point, at least according to the National Hurricane Center's official forecast, this does look like it's going to be a direct hit, but you can see how fast this is going to be moving. So tomorrow morning, it'll be just east of the Bahamas. By tomorrow afternoon, it'll be over Bermuda, and then by Thursday morning, it'll be several hundred miles east of Bermuda. So it is moving along at a pretty good clip, will be at least. Right now, it's only lifting northeast at 7, but it's going to rapidly move off toward the northeast over the next 24 hours and should shove its way into the northern part of the Atlantic. But what's going to be really interesting is how it's going to interact with Humberto that's also out there too. You can see as we go through the next 24 to 48 hours, it is expected to remain a hurricane, and then after that it should have a steady decline as it moves out into the northern part of the Atlantic. But unfortunately, right about there is where it's expected to be close to Bermuda, where it might be peaking out, at least according to our computer models. Meanwhile, Humberto, which was a Category 5 hurricane a few days ago, was a Category 4 as early as yesterday. The center is now kind of exposed as we've got a lot of wind shear that's kind of blowing the thunderstorms off to the east of that. So now that it is exposed and it's being affected by wind shear, and it's also starting to be affected a little bit by Imelda here too. So what's going to happen is Humberto is going to continue to weaken. Its winds are at 80 miles per hour. It might drop down to a tropical storm as early as this evening. Now with Humberto, there are no active watches or warnings. So the last advisory we got was at 11 o'clock this morning, and we won't get another advisory until 5 o'clock, or rather until 4 o'clock later on this afternoon. Imelda, because there is a hurricane warning now for Bermuda, will get another update on Imelda at 1 o'clock. They come down every 3 hours whenever there's a tropical storm watch or a hurricane warning that's in place. But Humberto, there are no watches or warnings out, so we'll just go ahead and get those advisories every 6 hours. But you see that it is going to stay a hurricane, but it's going to quickly transition to a non-tropical low-pressure area, but it will be hurricane strength tomorrow morning and then tropical storm strength as we move into the latter part of the day on Wednesday. Forecast models right on top of each other, very confident in the forecast that this is what's going to happen. When you see those lines on top of each other, your forecast confidence is pretty high. They spread out a little bit more, but really that's pretty negligible because always as you go farther out in time, you're going to have a little more disagreement between the different computer models. But the good news is that Humberto has probably already made its peak a couple of days ago, and over the next several days, we're going to see this steadily going down to a tropical storm and eventually a tropical depression. But when we look at the models, it's really interesting to see what some of the models are doing with both of these systems here in the the next 2 days. Water temperatures obviously are very warm in this particular area where Imelda is, but it is going to start to pull into some of the colder waters, kind of like Humberto is doing right now. And most of those water temperatures are going to remain above normal. I don't think that either one of these systems is going to be enough to really churn things around and drop the temperatures of the sea surface, those sea surface temperatures there. But there's a lot of heat content that's still kind of in place there where Imelda is, but you can see there's a lot less heat content as everything starts to move off toward the northeast. And the other reason why I tell you to go ahead and keep your guard up all the way through the new month of October is a lot of our tropical development happens in this area or in this area, and unfortunately that is a little too close for home. It doesn't give us a whole lot of prep time, so that's why you need to do some of the preparations now. Just have the supplies that you would need in case a tropical storm or hurricane comes our way, and then if let's say something puts us in the crosshairs, you'll be able to move on to step 2, which is picking up stuff outside, boarding up a house, whatever you might need to do, planning evacuations and things like that. But right now we don't have anything in this area, and let's hope we can get through at least the next 30 to 45 days before anything does decide to go in that area. Wind shear is still quite high across most of that region. And as we look at the computer models, what's really interesting is the Euro model from this morning is kind of doing a little more of a Fujiwara kind of dance. And if you're not familiar with that, that's what happens when two tropical storms start to interact with each other. Initially, they just kind of rotate and dance around. That's why I'm calling it a Fujiwara dance. And then eventually one will absorb the other. And if you want to learn more about what the Fujiwara effect is, I do have a link in the description below if you want to read on about that. But let's just push this into the future, and you can see that Humberto really weakens quickly, and Imelda ends up absorbing it completely. Not really a Fujiwara dance, but more of an absorption of that. But unfortunately, a lot of that energy is still going to making its way across the island of Bermuda, and then you see both of these sliding off toward the east. Now, down to our southeast, we're really not seeing anything new, which is great news there, but you can see that there's a lot more moisture here along the Gulf Coast and some of that streaming in from the Atlantic as well. That could be our weather pattern going into the next couple of weeks, bringing better rain chances, which we could really actually use here in Acadiana, even though we got some good downpours last week. Since then, it's been very dry, and most of our rain events have been about 8 to 10 days apart, so it does dry out pretty quickly. But there's a lot more moisture associated with the tropical weather. But as we go all the way out 10 days, we're really not seeing anything in this area, which is wonderful news. Let's hope that holds. Let's get back over to the GFS here real quick. We'll just go through that. And again, here is today, and kind of like what the Euro was doing, not exactly a Fujiwara spin, but more of an absorption of the tropical system and then moving off to the east as one particular system before it kind of lifts up into the northern Atlantic. Again, there's some of that moisture flow kind of coming in. This would be represented for Sunday going into the early part of next week. And you see the moisture continuing to build, not just over the southeast U.S., but all across the Gulf waters as well, which is going to be something maybe of a pattern change for us here locally. Unfortunately, going all the way out beyond 10 days, I'm not seeing any kind of a super type of cold front to come in. I know as we get into October, that's what we're really kind of looking for. We want to forget about the tropics, but I'll just go ahead and pull this out a little bit farther. It looks like maybe a decent cold front here, but again, that is all the way out to Sunday, October, looks like that's October the 12th, what I'm seeing here. So we're still talking about more than 2 weeks before any hints of a significant cold front coming in. But that's the way it goes here in South Louisiana. Meanwhile, we'll finish off, or we'll look at the Canadian model again. A little bit of a Fujiwara dance there, but it looks like more of an absorption again, and the trough is just going to kind of take over there. But also at the same time, when you got that big ridge of high pressure out here, it does tend to force more of that tropical moisture off toward the west. So we could be getting a little bit more moisture in the atmosphere going into the latter part of next week and into the early part of next weekend. Also, there's a little bit of a low kind of coming up there and also right over here, which is a little bit different than what the Canadian and the GFS were suggesting. We'll go ahead and finish with the icon. Remember, the icon is one of these that just kind of loves to develop just about anything. Little bit of a rotation, a little dance, and then looks like Imelda is going to take over as the main low pressure area. And then by the time we get into the middle part of next week, it does appear that that's going to continue to cruise off toward the northeast. Don't have the PWAS, precipitable water, for this particular model, and this model does only go out 7 days, but it is kind of starting to suggest maybe the flow coming in off the Atlantic, which could pump a little more moisture here along the Gulf Coast. At this point, it looks like it would probably just increase our chances for rain, not necessarily for this week, but maybe going into the early part of next week. But the good news is I really don't see any tropical weather coming anywhere close to the Gulf waters. Now, I will say, as we get into the middle part of October, that's when that Central American gyre starts to work its magic, and occasionally you can get tropical systems that will develop here over the Western Caribbean, and then they can shove their way off toward the north. So that's going to be really more of the particular threat that we're going to see here going into the month of October. Real quick look at the Google model. Just go ahead and put play on it, and this is going to go out 15 days, and you can see how both Imelda as well as Humberto kind of combine with each other and move off to the northeast, maybe a little low there by the Bahamas as we get into Friday of this week. But let's just kind of keep an eye on the Western Caribbean and portions of the Gulf waters. And I also want you to watch out here. Google's trying to show off something there in the middle part of the Atlantic. But at this point, I'm not seeing anything that looks like it might develop. So this is the Google AI is kind of showing where different low pressure areas could develop. And there's a lot of solutions on this, obviously, but you don't see a whole lot of those dots dancing around in the Gulf waters all the way through October the 15th. So kind of like the other two models going out beyond 10 days, it does look like that nothing's going to be really bothering us here along the Gulf Coast. Again, let's hope our luck holds. Did want to mention that as we go through the month of October, you see that we're right there on the calendar. It's about double the amount of average that we would see around October the 1st. And even as we get to November the 1st, it's still right about the same level as what you see during the early part of August. Now, normally in November, we don't have to worry a whole lot here along the northern Gulf Coast. But back in 2024, we had Hurricane Milton that was down to the south. Wasn't a threat to us, but it did affect Florida. So we can still have tropical storms and hurricanes even during the month of November. But this is where we're sitting right now. We've got 9 named storms under our belt. Normally, by the time we start October, we should have about 11. And as far as hurricanes, Imelda is the 4th one of the season. So again, we're about 2 weeks behind schedule. We should have 5, maybe going on 6 hurricanes, but we are right on target for major hurricanes. Actually, a little bit early, because we've had 3 major hurricanes now. Aaron as well as Humberto, both were Category 5 hurricanes, and then Category 4 hurricane was Gabrielle. So we've had 3 major hurricanes, and usually we don't have our 3rd one until sometime late in October. So we're a little ahead of schedule on the major hurricanes, but behind schedule on the big count on the numbers. Also, wanted to show you again, areas of the Western Caribbean, Southeastern Gulf, and then out here over the Atlantic. These are your prime hotspots for where tropical storms and hurricanes would develop and track during the month of October. So a lot of times, if you do have something that develops out here, let's say in the Caribbean, during the early part of October, a lot of those can drift their way in this particular direction over toward the northern Gulf Coast. But as we get into the latter part of the month, you start to get these bigger fronts that come off the U.S. continent or the American continent, and a lot of times you see our tropical systems kind of shoot their way out to the east. So that will be the trend going through the month of October. Let's hope our luck holds here for the next several weeks. Well, I hope you enjoy Let's Talk Tropics. If you do, like this video, subscribe to my channel, and also turn on those notifications. And remember, you can hear my forecasts on Big 102.1, Planet Radio 106.7, and Freedom 95.1. Also, you can catch my forecasts over at WBRZ Channel 2 in Baton Rouge. I'm going to be home for the rest of the week, but I will be there Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. If you can't catch us on TV, you can use the link that I've got down in the description below. And also follow my social media pages for updates on Imelda and Humberto for the next couple of days, both on Facebook and X. And of course, thanks to everyone who's already subscribed to Acadiana Weather Today right here on YouTube. I'm meteorologist Dave Baker. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, and I'll see you on Wednesday morning.